Ubuntu just released a brand new version 25.04, codenamed Plucky Puffin. Now I'm going to go ahead and take a quick first look at 25.04. I've already gone and grabbed the ISO. I'm going to run through a quick installation and first look inside a virtual machine. So I've already created the VM. So let's go ahead and run through the installer. Of course, this is Ubuntu's new installer, their Flutter-based installer, which I've been very impressed with. Now, by default, it's using a light mode for the theme, but you can change this if I go here and choose dark style. Changes all your GTK apps to using dark mode. It also changed the background, the wallpaper, to a dark wallpaper. So for purposes of recording, I know, white applications are kind of blinding to you guys watching the video. So I went ahead and changed that for you guys. Let's go ahead and run through the installation. So choose your language. English is correct for me. So I'll just click next, and then accessibility options. So if you've got some disabilities and you need some of these accessibility options turned on, you can. For me, I don't need this, so I'm just going to click next. Next up, keyboard layout. English US is correct for me. I have the ability to test the keyboard by typing something if I really want to test special characters or anything like that, depending on what key map you're choosing. But for me, I should be good. And I'm using a wired connection, so I'm fine here. If I was on a device that also had a Wi-Fi chip in it, I could choose to connect to Wi-Fi as well. And then update now. An update is available for the installer. Do you want to go ahead and update it? Sure, why not? It's downloading Ubuntu Desktop Bootstrap, whatever package that is. All right, and since the update is done, close the installer. Now, will it relaunch the installer, or do I have to relaunch it myself? I guess I have to relaunch it myself. Alright, so I relaunched it and I got a startup sound. Okay, let's run through this one more time. English, skip that. English US for the keyboard layout, wired connection, interactive installation, or automated with an auto install file. I don't have an auto install file, so I'll do the interactive installation. Let's do the default selection, which is your essentials, your web browser, and basic utilities. If you want the extended selection, you'll get a few more things installed, such as an office suite and some other utilities. For me, I like the more minimal installation. Install recommended proprietary software. This is very important. If you're doing this on physical hardware, you almost certainly want to install third-party software for graphics drivers, Wi-Fi drivers. You really need to tick that on. Download and install support for additional media formats. You also want to make sure to tick that on to get all of your audio and video formats, just so it's supported. So when you're watching Blu-rays or whatever it is you're doing on your computer, it actually works as you would expect. Click next. How do you want to install Ubuntu? Do you want to erase the disk and give the entire drive in this machine over to Ubuntu, or do you want to manually partition the drive yourself, which you may need to do if you're dual booting? For me, I'm just going to give the entire disk to Ubuntu. And do I want to encrypt the disk or no encryption? If you're doing this on physical hardware, you probably want to encrypt the disk. For me, in this virtual machine, I will skip doing the encryption. Then I need to create my account. So my name, I'm going to call my user DT. The computer host name, I'm going to call this Ubuntu -VM. That way, if I ever SSH into this virtual machine, I know it's my Ubuntu VM. And now I need to create a strong and complicated password for the DT user, and then confirm the strong and complicated password. And do I want to require my password to log in? Yes, you should have to enter a password to get into your computer for privacy reasons. Make sure that somebody just can't sit down at your computer and, for example, read your emails or whatever. So yeah, always have that ticked on. You also have the option to use Active Directory. I don't know what that is, so I'm just going to skip that, right? I think it's a Windows thing. And then time zone. Central time zone in the US is correct for me, so I'll just click next. And then a summary. Review your choices, and if all the choices look correct, click the install button and away you go. And this portion of the installation typically takes about 5 to 10 minutes on my machine, so I'm going to step away, grab a cup of coffee, and I'll be back once Ubuntu 25.04 has finished installing. All right, I'm back with my cup of coffee, and the installation is already completed. That was very quick, probably under 10 minutes to get through the installation. Now what I need to do is, of course, is to reboot the computer, so I'm going to click Restart Now. There was a, I guess, shutdown sound as well, although it sounded a bit weird. And we finally get to our login manager. Let me go ahead and log in to our desktop. Of course, the desktop will be the GNOME desktop. This will be the latest version of GNOME 48. I do need to make sure that our screen resolution is correct in this virtual machine. So let me go ahead and find the displays program here for our display setting. And let me make sure that this virtual machine has a 1920 by 1080 screen resolution. So let me apply, let me keep changes. And now every time I come to this VM, it should remember when I log in that I want 1920 by 1080 for the screen resolution. Now, one interesting thing, I don't know, I guess when I did this during the installation, when I chose dark mode, it remembered, I guess I wanted dark mode because I didn't have to re-choose that on login. So that is interesting. We have our little welcome application. Welcome to Ubuntu 25.04. Do I want to view the release notes? Not really. Let me click next. Help improve Ubuntu. So do I want to enable any kind of telemetry, any kind of diagnostic reports, things like that? Since they asked nicely, I'll leave that ticked on as yes. If you don't want to share any of that information, of course, you can choose no if you want. Do I want to go ahead and open the App Center, your software center, and install some applications that you may need? Of course, you're probably going to want to do that if you're installing this on physical hardware. There's probably some applications that you need that aren't here out of the box, because remember, Ubuntu is kind of minimal in that it doesn't install a ton of applications out of the box. So you may need to go ahead and do this. For me, I'm going to go ahead and finish and close the welcome app. By default, we do have the ability to have icons on the desktop. For me, I typically don't like that. I typically turn the setting on where it basically hides all the icons on the desktop. I typically don't throw stuff on my desktop anyway. So let's go ahead and see what is installed out of the box here on Ubuntu 25.04. You do have a couple of pinned applications over here in the dock. Of course, the Firefox web browser is the default web browser. And let me go ahead and make this full screen. And let's see what version they are on. If I go to Help and About Firefox, we are on Firefox 137.0.1. This is the Mozilla Firefox Snap for Ubuntu. So Mozilla maintains a snap package for Ubuntu here. Let's go ahead and close that out. We have the Nautilus file manager, of course, also pinned to the dock, and it looks gorgeous. I love the theming as far as the GTK theming, and of course, I love the Yaru icon set that Ubuntu uses. It's really one of the more polished desktop Linux distributions, Ubuntu. It kind of always has been, but this really looks pretty good what they've got going on here. We have the App Center also pinned to the dock. Let's go ahead and launch their App Center. So let's search for something and see something that I know is probably not installed out of the box. A lot of people are going to need, proprietary software like Discord or Zoom, or Spotify is another one that a lot of people, a lot of you guys have Spotify subscriptions. Can we go get that? And yes, we can. The reason we can go get this is because even though Spotify is proprietary software, so is Discord, so is Zoom, you're probably not going to be able to go grab that from the standard Ubuntu repos as far as a deb pack, but because they have snaps enabled out of the box, there are snaps available for all that proprietary software. So if you want to, you can go and get Spotify installed. Let's go ahead and install it. And it's going to take a minute or so. And it finished installing. That installation of Spotify there took a few minutes. That took a good 3 or 4 minutes. Now, that was the very first time I installed a package. It probably had to spend some time syncing some repos. In this case, it was pulling that in, of course, from the Snap server, because it's installing it as a Snap package. So there may have been, because it was the very first time I ran it, it probably took a little longer. But going forward, hopefully some of those installations don't take quite as long. But now that I've got Spotify installed, if I go into the dash here, you can see I've got Spotify. Let's try to launch it. Make sure it actually launches correctly, and it does. So there you go. So Software Center does look like it's working as you would expect. I do notice I've got this notification here, manage, and then I've got the number 1. What am I managing here? There must be an update that I need to take. Yeah, updates available. You see Firefox is one of the updates. So Obviously, you want to make sure your web browser is up to date. So let's go ahead and take that update. And that should just take, hopefully, a few seconds. Yeah, and that update finished very fast. So now that we've done our updates, we've tested the Software Center. So let's take a quick look at what is installed out of the box on Ubuntu 25.04. We have our additional drivers program. Now, if you chose to install third-party drivers during the installation process, remember I made it a point when it asked you to check that box to install third-party proprietary drivers. I said make sure to tick that on. If for some reason you didn't tick that on, and you do need those proprietary graphics drivers and Wi-Fi drivers, then you would use this program. You will come here, additional drivers. It will search for any proprietary drivers for your machine. It'll do that automatically, and it will list what it finds, and then you hit apply changes and you're done. It's all pretty much automatic for you. A really easy tool to use. Also here we have our GNOME calculator. We have document viewer, which used to be events, but they're not using events anymore. This is Document Viewer 48. Now, that's not the real name of the program. The actual binary name of the program, I believe, I think it's Papers. I can check that out. Control-Alt-T, I'll launch a terminal, right? If I type Papers, yeah, that is the Document Viewer. I really hate the generic names. I wish they would just give me the name of the program. I'm also not really sure why we swapped out Events. Events was a fantastic PDF reader, but the great thing about Linux and free and open source software is we have a ton of great open source PDF readers, so there's plenty of good ones to choose from. We also have GNOME clocks. We have Firmware Updater if you need to update your firmware. We have our image viewer, language support, our settings manager. Let's go into the GNOME settings because there are some things with this version of GNOME 48, that are a little different than previous versions. One thing is now we have well-being. What is well-being? Well, this is how much time you spend on your computer, how much screen time you have. You can actually set screen time limits and daily limits, and you can give yourself break reminders and things like that. So really neat setting. I'm actually really happy that that's there. That's something more of us need to pay attention to, is how long we've been staring at our screens. Now, when I install Ubuntu, because I install Ubuntu on people's machines all the time, you know, people bring me their Windows laptops to wipe out and put Linux on. I typically install Ubuntu, typically the LTS. Matter of fact, I did that 2 days ago on a family member's computer. And, you know, one of the things I always do, I go to Ubuntu desktop and I go ahead and make sure, you know, that the dock, auto hide the dock, is turned off. But if they want it turned on, you can auto hide the dock to where, you know, when you're full screen, when the window, you know, needs that space, the dock goes away. I kind of like that as a default. Not everybody will like it, but if they like it, I make sure to turn that on for them. Most people don't like the gigantic icons. 48 pixels is a little too big. I usually, even without asking, I just bump that down to 32 pixels. That's still plenty big enough. Everybody can tell that that's Firefox and that's, you know, a file manager. Like, that's still, you know, pretty big icons, but it's not as gigantic. So I turn that down a little bit. And sometimes I will go into the appearance and ask them, for example, do they like any of these wallpapers? Let's play with some of the wallpapers. Usually I save that for the end, but, you know, let's go through some of the wallpapers. I really like that. I really like abstract art anyway, and that's a pretty neat picture. Of course, I do love landscape photographs. That is a beautiful mountain scene. And of course, we have our sky here, night sky. Then we have, of course, our puffin. You know, Plucky Puffin is the code name, so it's a bird. Don't really know too much about puffins, what they are, where they're found. But I do love this wallpaper. That is really nice. Again, abstract art wallpaper. Really cool stuff. I really like this one too, with the Ubuntu logo. Matter of fact, I may just leave that one on. I'm going to go with that for now. And if I get back into the dashboard to see what is installed out of the box, really not much else other than Spotify, which I installed myself. We have our terminal here, which I would use the terminal often enough. I would need to put it, you know, in the dock somewhere. And if you put things in the dock, of course, it's no longer here in the dash. That's why Firefox is not here. It's because Firefox was pinned to the dash. We have text editor though. Let's see what text editor we're on. I don't think we're using gedit anymore. We're using text editor. What's the name of what's the binary name of this text editor? Oh, whatever text editor it is, they have a plain text editor installed. We'll just leave it at that. So that's pretty much it as far as the graphical applications that are installed. The GNOME 48 desktop, looks great, functions great, even in this VM. I mean, everything is peppy. We got your desktop switcher up here, really very clean, very polished looking desktop environment. One last thing I want to do, let me go ahead and bring the terminal back up, because the most important thing is going to be under the hood stuff. This is a interim release, right? This is not a long-term support release. So typically like 95% or more of Linux desktop users, if they're using Ubuntu, are going to want to be on one of the LTS releases. So if you go and install Ubuntu, typically you're going to go download the last LTS, which is 24.04. Why would you want to install a interim release like 25.04, which only has like 9 months of support? Right, it's a very small support window. The only reason you would use this is if you have really new hardware. Like you've got a computer that's got really new hardware that needs a driver that's not going to be in an older kernel, right? You need the absolute latest kernel that just came out, right? So Ubuntu is on 6.14. There were actually some gaming improvements as far as frame rates with Linux kernel 6.14. So if you're a hardcore gamer, you might want to be on this kernel. So that's really, I guess, the biggest selling point is that kernel. If you're curious about how many applications are actually installed out of the box, we could do a apt list space -i to list all the installed packages that were installed as Debian packages through the apt package manager. So if I want to, I can take that apt list -i, pipe that into wc-l, which is the word count program, -l, give me a line count rather than a word count. And 1,610 packages were installed on Ubuntu 25.04 out of the box using the apt package manager. Now that doesn't include the snap packs. Let's do a snap list. And let me zoom out so we can actually see the list. And we have not much here is installed out of the box as a snap. Firefox is a snap. And of course the Snap Store, the Software Center, is installed as a snap. And Spotify I added myself. So really, if you don't count like the core snaps, some of the theming stuff, it's really like 2 snaps that are installed out of the box. So the people that complain that, Ubuntu is forcing a lot of snaps on you, they're forcing the Snap Store on you if you want to install snaps. But other than that, Firefox is a snap. And they do that mainly just because it's easy to update, because snaps auto update. And they're doing that primarily for security reasons. The other reason they're doing that is because Mozilla themselves are maintaining that snap package. You can see it's not Canonical making the Firefox snap. It's actually Mozilla making that snap pack. And of course, you've got a lot of, other important packages that are going to be on newer versions. If I do that apt list -i and I grep Mesa, you can see Mesa now is on version 25. Other things you can check are here. We could actually grep for Pipewire, and you can see that Pipewire is on version 1.2.7. Some other things we could check on. Let's, check on Bash. What version of Bash are we on? We are on Bash 5.2.37. So there you have it. Ubuntu 25.04 Plucky Puffin looks like a really fantastic release. Very clean, very polished. Again, it's one of my go-to distributions, especially to install on other people's machines, especially people that aren't necessarily tech savvy, people that really are very basic computer users. All they need to know is, hey, there's the web browser. And then they launch the web browser and they navigate to Facebook or wherever it is they spend most of their time on the internet. Ubuntu, again, that's a job well done on version 25.04. It looks like it's going to be a fantastic release. For those of you that, again, want to try out 25.04, yeah, check it out. For most of you guys, you probably still want to be on the LTS release unless you really need that latest kernel. Now, before I go, I need to thank a few special people. I need to thank the producers of this episode: Matt, Steve, 40mm, Cap, Caveman, Darloff, Lee, Jersey Killer, Mark, Methos, Urion, Paul, Peace Archer, Mordor, Realities for Less, Red Prophet, Roland, War Gentoo, and Ubuntu, and Willie. These guys, they're my highest tiered patrons over on Patreon. Without these guys, this quick look at Ubuntu 25.04 would not have been possible. The show is also brought to you by each and every one of these fine ladies and gentlemen as well. All these names you're seeing on the screen right now, these are all my supporters over on Patreon because I don't have any corporate sponsors. I'm sponsored by you guys, the community. If you like my work, want to see more videos about Linux and free and open source software, subscribe to DistroTube over on Patreon. Peace, guys.